Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we are once again talking about secondaries. I know I talked about it a little bit in Saturday's video, talking about the changes to Deadeye, that change being it's gone, thank God. And today I want to kind of expand on what I touched on there with the secondary comment. So, in Saturday's video, I was referring to secondary ships that weren't the Germans, because the Germans at least got their accuracy buffed to where it's slightly better than what it was when we were testing it out on the PT server way back before the Commander rework drop, and to where their secondaries, or at the very least now, I think everyone can agree that their secondaries are at least usable. They are very much a shadow of what they used to be. And if you don't know, before the Commander rework went live, the accuracy of the German secondary battleships, so, well, all of the German battleships, got buffed by about 22%. So the base accuracy got buffed by 22%. To where now there's only a 10% loss of accuracy with a new secondary build versus the old secondary build. The old secondary skills, well, the old manual fire secondary skill used to give you a 60% boost to the accuracy of your secondaries once you had selected a target for your secondaries to focus on. The new skill only gives you a 35% buff, which is a far cry from 60. But it allows the other side of your ship to fire, which does, mathematically double the amount of shells you're putting out. But when you're dropping a 60% boost down to 35%, that's still a 25% loss in accuracy. But then, like I said, with the Germans at least, they buffed the base accuracy by 22.5% to where we're only about 10% away from where we started off from. And even that little 10% is still very noticeable. I think Deadeye taught us all that 10% is quite the change. To where, they just aren't as accurate as they used to be. They really aren't. Whereas before, you can just go watch my old videos from before the Commander rework. Especially with the Germans, the guns were so much more accurate, the secondaries. All the shells were landing in a nice tight cluster, where now the shells just tend to bathe whatever the target is in secondary fire, more of them going into the water than actually hitting the ship. And this is probably most noticeable on the American secondary ships. I mean, go look at Massachusetts, Georgia, and Ohio from before the Commander rework to where they're at now. Before the Commander rework, these ships were ungodly accurate with their secondaries. But now they're about the same as the Germans. So that's quite a hit to their accuracy. But I'm not necessarily talking about those ships. A buff to those ships I do think is warranted. But I'm talking about the other secondary ships. The ships that had the option of building into secondaries. It probably wasn't their strongest suit, but you could build into it and it could work. Now, some of these ships, like the Mutsu, which is a tier 6, got kind of a buff, but this mainly happened to a lot of higher tier ships, and a couple of ships that are quite the grind to get, and that people grinded out for the specific reason of their secondaries being a viable option. And two prime examples of that I bring up all the time is the Siegfried and the Shikishima. Now, the Siegfried's in a bit of a different boat than the Shikishima, because the Siegfried can't even build into its secondaries anymore. At all. The skills literally do not exist. In the commander section, at least. You can put the module on there for your for your cruiser modules, but that's it. I mean, there's top grade gunner too, which gives you a 10% boost to your secondary reload time if an enemy is within your detection range. But that's it. You can't. There's nowhere else to build into to spec out the accuracy of the secondaries. And Siegfried was quite the good secondary cruiser before the rework. And Siegfried is a research bureau ship, meaning that you had to regrind a line around 6 times, as low as 5, as much as 7, depending upon how many research bureau points you got, and if you were doing it during the during the double research bureau points bonus which you can get like every couple of months or something like that. You know, you had to put in a lot of work to get it. That's what I'm saying. A lot of work. Then there's of course the Shikishima, who's probably the biggest loser, at least in my mind, in my heart, because I used to love the ship so much back when you could build into the secondaries and it'd be quite a good secondary ship. And if you look at Shikishima from before and after, it's night and day, the accuracy of the Shikishima secondaries. What made the Shikishima secondaries good is that, one, they were very accurate. Not American battleship accurate, but pretty darn accurate. Two, their reload time, because the Shikishima has, and it still does, has the fastest reloading time of its secondaries out of any of the tier 10 battleships. All of them, including the Germans, including the Americans. They have the highest DPM on her secondaries. What also makes them very good is that they are the Harugumo's guns. They can pin 30 millimeters of armor without IFHE. So, I know a lot of people are going, well, you need to pin 32. Like, oh, calm down. What used to make them good is that they were very accurate, had a very high DPM. They can already pin 30 millimeters of armor, and they have a 6% chance of starting a fire on guns that are insanely accurate. Well, used to be insanely accurate for being a Japanese battleship with secondaries. But of course, after the commander rework, that all went out the window. And of course, Shikishima is a steel ship. It took me 2 seasons of Clan Wars and a season and a half of Ranked to save up enough steel to get the Shikishima. And then they change her that hard overnight. And they haven't talked about buffing her back up. But since Wargaming seems to be listening a little bit more in terms of commander skills, I'm asking you this autumn to please buff secondaries. I think a lot of players really appreciate it if their ships they used to be able to build into with the secondaries would be able to do that once again viably. And that's not even mentioning the French battleships. Like the Alsace, there's no reason to build into the secondaries anymore. They just aren't as accurate. You're committing, at least I believe it's 12 skill points into a build where at 3 kilometers away from the target, as you should be seeing on the screen right now, half the shells are still going into the water on a tier 10 battleship with 12 skill points dumped into this build. So over half of the skill points that we're now given with the 21 skill points are going into this build, and these guns can't hit a Montana from 3 kilometers away, and the shells are going into the water, half of them. Like that's ridiculous in my opinion. It's such a heavy skill commitment that you should be able to hit the target from 3 kilometers away. And a ship that had good secondaries before the rework and was designed with good secondaries. And if the ship wasn't designed to have good secondaries, then why in the world did you give it Harugumo turrets? Why? I mean, it had to be taken into account when the ship was being designed, and it was touted as having good secondaries. I'm saying this because when asked about it on stream once, the response was given that ships like the Shikishima and Siegfried have quote-unquote other abilities to make up for their loss of their secondary power. Okay then, but a lot of people got these ships because of their secondaries. Not saying everybody, of course, with the Shikishima's case, because 20-inch guns, most people got it for that, but a good chunk of people, myself included, got it for the secondaries because it's a Japanese battleship with really good secondaries that could make it work. And honestly, the ship kinda needs it because you only have 6 guns, and when a DD sneaks up on you, I mean, first off, they're essentially Yamato turrets. They take forever to rotate. They move at about the same speed as a glacier. 2, of course, with the changes to battleship AP versus DD forever ago, to where DDs only take 10% of the maximum damage from battleship shells. You aren't really going to be able to kill a DD with only 6 AP shells. And, the reload time on the Shikishima is quite good, but you're not going to be able to change over to HE quick enough to deal with the DD, but the secondaries had your back. And I've literally deathstruck a DD with Shikishima secondaries before, by themselves, not including any hits from the main battery guns. It was a Yu Yang. He tried to sneak up on me from behind an island. Already had him spotted beforehand. Had him selected with the secondaries. Came around the island, and they just ripped him a new one. It was hilarious. And that video's still up on my channel somewhere. But, yeah. And that's not even touching the French battleships. The Alsace, the Republic. The Alsace, her secondaries, they don't pin very well, but just like the Shikishima, they have a very decent DPM, have a decent chance starting a fire, 5%. And with all the guns that she has, she could spew out enough to where she could deal with battleships, and she could deal with DDs as well. Battleships through setting fires, DDs through just sheer amount of crap being thrown at them. So, these ships have been absolutely shafted by this rework. The goal of the rework was to increase build diversification. When in fact, for just the ships we've talked about here, and there are more that could build into their secondaries and have pretty decent secondaries, but now they pretty much can't because their accuracy is so garbage that they just can't do it. All these ships lost that build option. And now, with the changes being made, and from the tune I'm getting from what the devs have been saying about the changes, they want battleships to be pushing up again. Best way to do that, make secondaries viable. Because people will want to get into secondary range and use their secondaries. Even at 12.5 kilometers in the GK, you're still getting way closer than any battleship's getting right now. So of course, after Deadeye changes, battleships are still going to be probably sitting in the back, if we're being honest. Not as far back as before because Deadeye's no longer a factor. But if you want to further encourage them to push up, give them their secondaries back. Give them a motivation to push up. I mean, the secondary skill, the new one, the one good thing about it is that it does give you that 10% boost to your reload time. So you are being rewarded for pushing in and getting to secondary range. But on ships that don't have decent secondaries, sure, that buff to your reload time is fantastic, but your secondaries aren't there to help you out when you're that close. And a battleship, especially today, many of them can't one-shot DDs and cruisers from close range because they'll get a lot of overpins most of the time, or they'll miss because battleship guns. But having those secondaries there that back you up to know, okay, you know, if I could do this much damage to him, my secondaries can chew on him, and maybe I'll be able to deal with him before he takes me out, or at least I'll be able to deal with him or do a lot of damage to him before he takes me out. You know, giving some motivation to push up. That's the bottom line. There needs to be motivation to push up. So that's my plea, devs. If you're watching, please take that into consideration and restore our secondary glory once again. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 27,000 subs. We're on our way to 25,000 subs. We just passed 23,700 a few days ago, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're all having a very wonderful Monday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.